Today I'm sharing with you 7 ways you can get caught up in your journal fast. Hello my beautiful creative souls, and welcome back for today's video, which is a little bit of a follow-up to last week's video. Last week I shared with you 7 benefits of being behind in your journal, and while that resonated with so many of you, a lot of you also said you were super behind and you felt like you just couldn't move on unless you documented kind of the things that you need to catch up on, and that it was really kind of holding you back. So I thought I'd bring you this video today to hopefully give you some inspiration and some ideas to get you kick-started back into that journaling and get you back on track ASAP, because you know, we don't want to be feeling guilty about past spreads, all right? So let's catch up as soon as possible. Today, I want to share tips with you to kind of trick your brain into being okay with not documenting those things. Each of these tips is kind of at a varying degree level of effort. Feel free to mix and match, do whatever you need to do. But I thought it'd be fun to share these tips with you while also sharing with you a journal with me. This is a journal with me of me starting my current journal, and this was after taking 2 months off. So what you're going to be seeing here is me documenting the most current event after I started this journal, which was going on a trip to Virginia with my father so he could look at a college. And that is tip number 1 for me, which is to just start a new journal. I could have continued the journal that I was in, but because I hadn't been in it in several months, it just didn't feel right. So rather than put pressure on myself and kind of have that reminder, I just started fresh and started a new journal. Now this tip isn't going to work all the time, of course. You know, if you're a week behind, you're not going to start a new journal, but if you do have kind of a long period there, first tip is just start fresh and start with the most recent memorable event and document that. Within the journal, after I documented that, I did kind of go ahead and put in some of those other big meaningful things that had happened in the past 2 months after this entry. And I know some of you said you can't do the out of, chronological order thing. You could obviously go back and document those things in your previous journal, but this at least gets you started out on the right foot moving forward with your journaling. So that was tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to just write little titles and blurbs of events in a list style format. So a good way to get caught up is just be like, here's the headline, here's a fun title of, the summary of the thing I want to get caught up on. Here's maybe 1 or 2 sentences of the main points that I want to document about that event. And then you can just, put photos with it if you have photos and you want to, but just kind of put a running list of, hey, these are the things that I want to document, in this journal, this space that I still have to fill in. But if I don't get to it, you at least still have the list. You have those kind of quick snapshots of what happened. So tip number 2 is just to make a bulleted list. Tip number 3 is to clip in or tuck in photos and ephemera where you think it should go, or write a sticky note summary. So if you're doing kind of a day a page type thing, take a sticky note, write, again, 2-second summary. This is what we did today. Here's the stuff that goes with that, and just leave the space for those things. And then if you never get to it, you already still kind of documented it. It's like an easy way of cheating. It's getting them in with very minimal effort, and if you want to go back, you can do that and have those full-fledged sessions, but if not, the memories are still there, which is the whole point, right? Tip number 4 is probably one that I utilize the most within my own journaling, and that is to write a larger journal entry like you're catching up with like an old friend. Hey, this is what happened during the past 2 months. This can be really fun because you're catching yourself up on the main points. You're kind of reminding yourself of, hey, the journey you've taken over the past couple of months, and it really makes you distill down which of those memories are actually important, right? You wouldn't write your friend a 20-page long entry describing every minute detail of your life. I mean, maybe you would, maybe you're that type of person, but I wouldn't. So it makes you kind of distill down the information and documents it in a fun way. Tip number 5 kind of goes along with that, which is to literally journal about where you're at. And again, this is one that I do a lot. So what I mean by that is to come to your journal and you sit down and you just start writing, hey, haven't written, in a while. I'm feeling very guilty for not doing that, or, insert whatever your monologue is. This is just an example, but, I'm feeling really guilty for not having come to this. There are some things I really want to document, and it's really holding me back from journaling right now, so on and so forth. And then just kind of moving forward with that, like, okay, I'm acknowledging where I'm at the moment. I'm acknowledging how I'm feeling about that, and I'm just going to go ahead and move forward. And sometimes those entries say, I had a really rough 2 months and I didn't feel like journaling, and I don't really have anything, positive to document. So we're just going to move forward. But that's kind of the explanation for the couple months gap that I have. And that's totally fine. Gaps tell the story too. I think we often forget that. Having periods of time that aren't documented say a lot more sometimes than we could have said in words, or than we want to say in words. And it's totally okay to just kind of let the blank pages or the blank space speak for itself. Which brings us to tip number 6, which is leave the blank space. So kind of like you would do when you're setting up a journal, sometimes you leave pages, that you're going to go back to and put certain, collections in. If you're bullet journaling, that's a common thing. But to just kind of be like, hey, this is how many pages I think I'm going to need, especially works if you're a daily journaler, however many pages I'm going to need, and I'm just going to leave it and then start on today. And then if I want to go back and work on those pages, maybe I have a little extra time after my current journaling session and I want to go back and just nitpick away at those blank pages, you can do so. But it lets you move forward, right? This is the whole point, moving forward. So tip number 7 is to glue in just photos with a title. I do this one a lot as well. Don't have to make it this big, elaborate page. I know that it can kind of feel a lot of pressure sometimes to make everything, a cohesive and finished page, but sometimes just, slapping down a little background paper, sticking on a photo, and then a little label with like one sentence about what the photo is about, or, like, my dog's so cute, the end, like, that doesn't have to be a story. And just allowing yourself to kind of catch up in those little short micro bursts. Just here's a photo. Here's a title of what I think about that, and that's that. Tip number 8 is to narrow the entries down to just the ones that make you happy. We kind of touched upon this a little in the beginning, but again, I know this can be really hard, especially for the daily journalers and people who like to do things chronologically and kind of have a complete book. But we have to find a unique balance between honoring the mundane and making, our day means something. And it's not that every day doesn't mean something, but it does get to a point where it's like, if everything's special, nothing is special. Like, there is a fine line between being mindful and appreciating every day and finding magic in every day, and deeming every little minute absolute detail of your life to be worthy of writing a book about. Not that it's not worthy of writing a book about, but you don't need to put that pressure on yourself. So just narrow it down, maybe go through that list, pull out those, photos, whatever you like to document with. Maybe you just do ephemera, and just make yourself a list of the most important ones you want to hit. And that's now your catch-up list, instead of doing the whole amount of time that you had missed previously. And then my final tip is to actually make a pro-con list on catching up versus moving on. I know this technically isn't a tip to catch up, but I think that it's a very valuable tip, especially when we're talking about trying to move past that kind of block that we have about being behind. Taking a minute to just be like, hey, what is the pro-con list of catching up or moving on? And what are the consequences if I hold myself back by forcing myself to document the past? Like, what am I missing out on by blocking myself in this way? And I think it's important to kind of have that conversation with ourselves. We can be really, really hard on ourselves for not getting things done, and we can kind of get stuck in that black and white. But in this moment right now, what are the pros and cons of each thing, and what is the natural consequence of me holding myself back? You know, is the fact that you'll be not documenting the current stuff and stuck with nothing more of a consequence than skipping over the 2 months that you may not have, you know, documented? Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, those are my tips for getting caught up in your journal fast. If you have any, please feel free to leave them below. I'm sure your fellow creative peeps would love to pick your brain and steal your ideas. This is definitely something that we all deal with, being behind in our journal, and can definitely relate to, you know, feeling that block and the guilt kind of that comes with that. So I really hope that this was helpful. I hope that it helps propel you into your journal catch up or lack thereof, whichever avenue you choose. Again, use any, you know, mix or match them as you feel. Do whatever is right for you. I thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I look forward to speaking with you in the comments, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Take care, guys. Bye.